You weren't exactly sure when you started to drift, but the first sound you noticed was the rain. Not the heavy kind that thundered down or splashed in gutters, but the gentle kind, light and steady, like fingertips brushing across the windows. It started as a whisper. Just a few soft taps against the roof of the car, spaced far apart. You were lying with your head nestled against the window, seatbelt tucked aside, legs curled under a warm fleece blanket that smelled faintly of fabric softener and old memories. The inside of the car was dim, lit mostly by the soft pale glow of the dashboard. Red numbers blinked slowly on the digital clock. The air vents hummed with a warm current, and somewhere in the front, your dad adjusted the heater, not saying anything, just turning the dial with that familiar clicking sound. You could hear the engine beneath you, a low purr, comforting in its rhythm. A little vibration ran through the seat every time the car idled at a light or coasted forward through a quiet stretch of the city. It wasn't a loud car. It was old, yes, but it moved with the slow confidence of something well used and well loved. Outside, the city passed by in slow motion. You weren't watching it closely. Your eyes were half-lidded, drifting in and out of focus. But every so often, the orange blur of a streetlight would slide across the ceiling, then vanish again, like the rhythm of a lighthouse beam. Traffic lights blinked through fogged-up windows. Storefronts glowed soft and low, like stars tucked into the streets. The rain picked up slightly, building into a steady, even rhythm now, no longer a whisper, but a lullaby. Tap, tap, tap against the windows. A soft hiss on the windshield. The occasional splash from a passing car, the tires cutting through shallow puddles, sending up gentle waves of sound that receded almost as quickly as they came. You shifted under the blanket just a little, letting your body settle more fully into the shape of the seat. The fabric cradled you. There was a small patch of warmth beneath you where your body heat had pooled, and that pocket of comfort made it even harder to keep your eyes open. You weren't sure where you were going, and you didn't need to be. Your dad was driving. That was all that mattered. His silhouette was just visible in the front seat. Shoulders relaxed, hands steady on the wheel. The occasional movement of his head as he checked the mirror or turned slightly to glance at the road ahead. He wasn't talking. He didn't need to. There was nothing to say. You'd driven together like this countless times. On weekend errands, late-night returns from family dinners, long road trips through winding country roads. But tonight was quieter, slower, softer. The radio was on, but turned low. Just a murmur of soft music and even softer voices. You couldn't make out the words, only the tone. A gentle hum in the background. Familiar. Soothing. The city outside seemed slower than usual. The roads weren't busy. It was late, probably. Or just one of those evenings when everything felt hushed, like the world itself had curled up for a nap. The stoplights turned from red to green with no hurry. The occasional headlights passed in the opposite lane, reflections shimmering across wet pavement like watercolors bleeding together on damp paper. You pressed your forehead lightly against the cool window. It felt smooth and slightly fogged, and through it you could see the raindrops racing each other down the glass. Tiny rivers forming and colliding and vanishing into the lower edge. You followed a few of them with your eyes, then let your gaze go unfocused again. It wasn't about watching anything, just being. You could hear your own breathing, slow and even. The blanket over you shifted slightly with each inhale, then settled again. The warmth inside the car had built just enough to make the air feel thick and safe. The outside was cooler. You could feel it in the tiny draft that snuck in from the windowsill. But inside, it was like being in a nest, tucked away from the rain and the dark and the world beyond. You remembered moments like this before. Other drives, other rains. The same steady hum of the car. The same warm blanket. Maybe a hot chocolate balanced in the cup holder once. Maybe a pillow brought along for longer rides. Always your dad in the front seat. Always that quiet reassurance. He knew where he was going, and you didn't have to. The car took a soft turn, nothing sharp, nothing jarring. Just a gentle lean to the left, and you felt your body shift slightly with the curve. The seatbelt didn't pull. The blanket stayed in place. Your body rolled lazily with the car's motion, like being rocked gently in a cradle. Another light passed overhead, flashing amber on the ceiling and fading again. A storefront buzzed by in a blur of soft blue and white signage. A bus stop shelter stood empty, its bench glistening with raindrops. Your dad's hand moved on the wheel again, and you heard the faint click of the turn signal. Tick, tick, tick. 3 ticks. Then the soft sound of tires turning across slick pavement. You didn't even need to open your eyes. The city's shape was familiar by sound alone. There was the narrow street with the iron bridge, where the car's tires made that hollow thump. There was the long stretch past the gas station, where the bright lights spilled out onto the road like spilled cream. There was the curve where the road dipped and the windshield caught the red glow of a neon diner sign, reflecting it across your face for just a second. And all the while, the rain kept falling. Not hard, not stormy, just steady. The kind of rain that didn't demand attention, only offered company. The kind of rain that promised sleep, gently and persistently, until you couldn't keep your eyes open any longer. You yawned, quietly, slowly, and pulled the blanket higher under your chin. Your toes had found the warmest part of the seat, and you curled them instinctively, a soft flex, a tiny adjustment of comfort. The heater whispered from the front. The radio hummed. Your dad's fingers tapped once on the steering wheel, a soft rhythm to match the rain. The city blurred past your window in slow, melted shapes. And you, nestled in the cocoon of the back seat, began to drift. Not abruptly, not all at once, but slowly, like a feather spiraling downward through a warm room. You weren't asleep yet, but you weren't awake either. You were somewhere in between, somewhere quiet, somewhere safe. And the rain kept falling. The car turned again, a slow, fluid arc to the right that leaned your body gently against the door. You barely noticed it, half asleep now, your mind floating somewhere just above your thoughts. The rain still tapped at the windows, steady and soft, a rhythm you could almost breathe to. The sound had become your anchor, threading through the car like music that no one had to play. From the front seat, your dad made a small shift in posture. You could hear the slight adjustment as his jacket brushed against the seat back. He let out a soft breath through his nose, not a sigh exactly, just one of those quiet, automatic exhalations that said he was at ease. He didn't speak. He hadn't in a while. But the silence between you wasn't empty. It was warm, familiar, the kind that doesn't need to be filled. You opened your eyes briefly, just long enough to catch the blur of the city outside. It looked different through the fog glass, hazy and golden, every light doubled or smeared like an oil painting. A row of streetlights stretched down a long avenue, each one casting a soft amber pool onto the slick pavement below. The car passed under them one by one, and with each one, a faint flicker of light passed through the cabin, on the ceiling, across your dad's shoulders, along the inside of the door next to your face. The windshield wipers moved in slow arcs, swish, 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 then paused. Another few seconds passed, and then again. The same pace, the same pause, like a metronome keeping time not just for the rain, but for your breath. Every so often, you could hear the faint squeak at the end of each pass, just enough friction to remind you that something outside was being cleared away. You turned your head slightly against the window, eyes still half-lidded, and looked at the outline of your dad's hands on the steering wheel. Even in the dim cabin, you could see the shape of his fingers, steady, relaxed, slightly curled. One hand resting near the top, the other shifting down now and then as the car moved through gentle turns. The wheel moved as if by instinct, just small corrections here and there. Nothing abrupt. You could feel every shift in your body, the way the car leaned, the way it slowed for a yellow light, then rolled again when it turned green. Your dad didn't drive fast. He never had. Even when you were younger, even when the roads were empty and time was tight, he drove like someone who had nothing to prove. Just forward motion. Just calm. The heater continued its quiet hum, sending out warm air that wrapped around your feet and legs, making the cabin feel like a blanket itself. The vents clicked softly every few minutes, redirecting the airflow, adjusting to your dad's preferences as if they knew him too. Through the window, you watched as familiar places passed by. There was the park where you used to play, now just a row of black trees silhouetted against a rain-washed street lamp. There was the corner gas station, its red and white lights still glowing even this late at night, the awning glistening with falling rain, the puddles below reflecting the overhang like a mirror. There was the quiet diner, with the windows steamed over, a lone server wiping down a booth inside, their outline hazy through the glass. A yellow open sign flickered gently in one window. You remembered the pancakes there, the smell of syrup and warm plates and coffee that was too bitter but always smelled good. The car rolled on. Tires hissed against wet pavement, especially at crosswalks and turns where puddles had gathered into thin streams. You could hear the way the water parted beneath the wheels, a soothing slick sound that whispered in passing, "We're still moving, everything's okay, just keep going." Sometimes, when the car slowed at an intersection or paused for a pedestrian, you could hear other sounds too, faint and momentary. The click of a crossing light, the clatter of a bicycle chain, the distant hiss of a bus braking. But each sound faded quickly, leaving behind only the cocoon of the car, the rain, and the road. The dashboard lights glowed steadily, soft orange numbers, a little green light where the defroster was on, a dim blue icon showing that your dad's headlights were set to low beam. It was the kind of light you could stare at for hours without thinking, just brightness enough to feel present, but not enough to disturb the quiet. A song came on the radio, something instrumental, slow and melodic, the kind of music that felt like it had always existed. Your dad didn't change the station, he let it play. The notes drifted gently through the cabin, mixing with the rain, the heater, the road. You yawned without realizing it, your jaw parting wide beneath the blanket. You didn't even lift your hand to cover it. There was no need. No one was watching. The yawn passed, slow and stretching, and you felt your whole body sink just a little deeper into the seat. You adjusted the blanket with one hand, just to pull it higher up your shoulder, and in doing so, caught the smell of something familiar. Maybe the faint scent of your dad's cologne lingering in the seatbelt, or the peppermint gum he kept in the glove compartment. It didn't matter what it was, exactly. It just smelled like home. The rain had softened again now, back to a light drizzle, barely more than a mist. The wipers moved more slowly, their rhythm calming and unhurried. Outside, the city was less defined. Fewer people, fewer storefronts, just stretches of road, and the occasional stoplight blinking red over an empty intersection. It felt like you were driving through a dream. Not a vivid one, not a loud one, but a long, slow, quiet kind. The kind you float through. The kind that never ends abruptly. The kind that just fades into comfort. You could hear the slight rattle of the keys on your dad's keyring, swaying gently from the ignition. The way they tapped lightly against the steering column with each curve and bump in the road. That small sound had always meant safety. It meant he was here. It meant you didn't have to think, or worry, or watch. The street turned into a gentle hill, and the car climbed it without effort. Your ears popped very slightly, and your dad reached to adjust the heat again. One soft click. A new setting. Just enough to notice the change in airflow. Then the road leveled, and you felt your muscles relax again. You hadn't realized they'd tensed. But your body knew how to settle here. You tilted your head further against the window, now fully fogged with the heat of your breath and the warmth inside the car. You could feel a tiny vibration through the glass, just enough to remind you the rain was still there. Still falling. Still wrapping the city in softness. Outside, the headlights caught the shimmer of water on the road ahead. Each little ripple of light danced briefly and vanished again as the car passed. You couldn't see the stars tonight. The sky was low, heavy with clouds. But you didn't need to. The lights below were enough. A stoplight blinking in the distance. The red taillights of another car a block ahead, glowing like coals in the dark. And beyond that, just stillness. The whole city seemed to have agreed to be quiet for you. And you accepted its offer. The music on the radio faded into the background again, replaced by another voice. Soft, slow, gentle. Someone talking about the weather. You didn't catch the words, only the tone. Everything was winding down. Your breathing matched the rhythm of the engine. You could feel your heartbeat in your hands, your chest, your toes. Slow, steady, wrapped in warmth. The car took another slow turn. You felt your body lean slightly, then settle. The blanket shifted again, just a bit. You didn't move to fix it. You didn't need to. You were somewhere in the middle of a drive, in the middle of a city, in the middle of the night. And none of that mattered. All you needed to know was this. Your dad was driving. The rain was falling. The road was ahead. And sleep was already on its way. The world outside your window had softened. The longer you stayed curled up in the back seat, the more the scenery blurred. Rain-smeared lights, distorted outlines, shimmering puddles, all sliding past like a moving painting. Your breath had fogged the glass in patches, leaving translucent halos where the light leaked through. You didn't wipe it away. You liked the way the world looked through the haze, far away, untouchable, like something remembered from a dream. The drops on the window danced slowly. Some streaked downward in straight, steady lines. Others curved or hesitated, then trickled diagonally before merging with a wider trail and vanishing into the bottom edge. You watched them the way someone might watch fish in a tank or flames in a fireplace. Not trying to follow, just letting your mind sink into the rhythm. One large drop held your gaze. It trembled at the edge of its path, then slid slowly toward a waiting street, joined it, and disappeared. You smiled, barely, a breath of a smile. Not because anything was funny, just because it felt good to notice something small. In the front, your dad hadn't said a word, but somehow you could feel that he knew you were awake, sort of. Awake in the way that meant your eyes were open, but your thoughts were not entirely in the car. He didn't interrupt. He never did. He knew these late-night drives had their own kind of magic. The heater's hum filled the silence, punctuated now and then by the hush of wet tires or the gentle thud of a pothole smoothed over with years. The car didn't jolt. It swayed, as if the road knew it was carrying someone on the edge of sleep and agreed to be careful. Through the fog glass, the city looked unfamiliar, even though you knew it. A bakery passed by, closed now, but with a soft lamp still glowing in the back. A row of apartments rose in the distance, their windows glowing in soft yellows and blues. You imagined the lives inside. Someone washing dishes, someone reading by a lamp, someone carrying a baby to sleep. You didn't know them. You never would. But it was comforting to think of all the people out there, tucked into their own corners of the night, all drifting toward rest. The traffic lights made patterns across the car ceiling as you passed beneath them. Red, yellow, green, blinking and pulsing and casting soft glows that faded like fireflies. You leaned your head against the window again, adjusting just slightly so that your cheek touched the cool glass. Your fingers curled a little under the blanket, finding the edge and pressing it close to your chest. Your thoughts were slow now, heavy, the kind that didn't form sentences, just impressions, memories, shapes. You remembered riding in the back seat when you were small, the before you could see over the window ledge without a booster. The rain then had seemed like it was falling from space, and the car had felt like a tiny spaceship floating through a silent, glowing world. You remembered asking questions. Where are we going? Can we stop for hot chocolate? Why do raindrops race each other? Your dad had always answered with calm patience, even if he didn't know the answer. He'd say, "Let's see," or "That's a good one," or sometimes, "What do you think?" You imagined asking him now, "Why does this feel like the safest place in the world?" But there was no need. You already knew the answer. It was in the heater's hum, the rhythm of the wipers, the way your body had settled completely into stillness. It was in the way your dad drove, not fast, not slow, just steady. Never jerky, never rushed, always smooth. Every turn a gentle invitation. Every stop a pause, not a jolt. The car coasted through another stretch of empty road, and you closed your eyes again. Not to sleep just yet, but to rest. To let the motion carry you. With your eyes closed, the sounds became even more vivid. The soft hum of the road, textured and layered. The creak of the seatbelt clip whenever the car leaned left. The slight gurgle of the rain in the gutter as you passed a corner storm drain. The distant chime of a bell inside a convenience store as someone opened the door. All of it blurred together into a lullaby of the city at night. A city breathing with you. Your breath was slow now. In dot, 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 pause, outside. You imagined the clouds hanging low over the rooftops. Imagine them like a giant, gentle blanket stretched across the skyline, pressing down the noise, the traffic, the sharp edges of the day. Everything softened in the rain. Even time. You had no idea how long you'd been driving. Could have been 20 minutes. Could have been an hour. But it didn't matter. That was part of the peace, the sense of being carried, of not needing to track, or think, or plan, of just moving forward. The world through the window was pure dream now. Neon signs, hazy and blurred. Crosswalk signals blinking softly in the drizzle. The headlights of the car behind you glowing like distant stars filtered through the mist. You opened your eyes again, just a little. The light from a passing billboard flickered across your face. A soft flash, then gone. You watched a drop of rain slide slowly from the top of the window to the bottom, lazy and aimless. You could almost hear it move. You could almost feel the world exhale. The car turned again, down a side street, quieter now. You recognized this part of town. Tree-lined blocks, big sidewalks, old buildings with awnings and ivy. The trees hung low, their branches heavy with rain, some brushing the top of the car as you passed beneath them. The sound was like a whisper, like fingers brushing against fabric. You imagined the trees talking to each other, saying, "Shh, someone's trying to sleep." You let your eyes drift closed again, and this time a picture formed in your mind. Half memory, half dream. You were still in the car, still tucked into the back seat, but now you were drifting above the road, floating just slightly, the wheels skimming over puddles without touching them. The world had slowed even more, until everything outside the window moved like a dream, soft and gold and flickering. Your dad's silhouette was still at the wheel. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. He was the one keeping the car between the lines, the one who knew the turns by heart, the one who adjusted the heat without asking, who checked your blanket in the rearview mirror, who made sure the music stayed low and the tires stayed steady and the ride stayed soft. You felt the car slow, just slightly as it reached a stop sign, then coast again. You let out a long breath. You didn't even realize you'd been holding it. The next breath was deeper, fuller. You sank another layer down, the kind of sinking that had no bottom. That asked for nothing. That just welcomed you. The city continued to pass, quiet, gentle, distant. But it no longer mattered where you were, because now you were nowhere, and you were everywhere. You were part of the window fog, part of the rain, part of the warmth between the vents and the blanket, and the steady hum of tires on wet asphalt. You didn't need to understand anything. You didn't need to decide or speak or listen. You just needed to be here, in this dream, in this seat, in this drifting. And so you did. The backseat had become something more than a seat now. It was a cocoon, warm, weightless, softly humming around you, like a lullaby made physical. You didn't remember adjusting your position, but your legs had folded neatly beneath the blanket, and your shoulder was resting in just the right hollow of the door. Every inch of you was still. Not the stiff kind of still, but the heavy, molten kind. Like your bones had finally decided to stop trying. The heater had found its perfect setting. Not too warm, not dry, not drafty. Just that slow, gentle current that flowed over your feet and up to your chest. It moved like a river of comfort, never abrupt, never too loud. You could hear it if you listened closely, but more than that, you could feel it, like your skin was breathing with it. A shift in the airflow whispered across your neck and then stopped. Your dad had cracked the front window open, just a little. You knew the sound of it well, the faint motor hum, the quiet tick as it settled into place. A thread of cool air drifted back into the car, barely noticeable, except in how it made the warmth feel even warmer. The contrast was soothing. The cocoon had layers now, outer shell of cool mist, inner pocket of perfect heat. You imagined the car from the outside, drifting slowly down a rain-slicked avenue, your dad behind the wheel, the windshield fogged at the edges, soft golden light blooming out through the windows into the night. From a distance, it probably looked like a lantern on wheels, some small, glowing craft making its gentle way through a quiet world. But from inside, it was everything. It was peace. It was being held. The city outside had all but disappeared into darkness. The buildings grew lower. Trees leaned closer. Streetlights stretched farther apart, their glow falling in soft pools between shadows. The neighborhoods here were older, sleepier. Houses huddled beneath long porches, their windows glowing like warm eyes. You passed a row of houses where someone had left a porch light on, the warm yellow glow catching the slow fall of rain, illuminating it like silver thread. A few wind chimes clinked gently in the breeze, soft, irregular notes like bells trying to remember a song. The wipers moved again, swish, pause, swish. They were slower now, the rain less insistent. The drizzle had become more like mist. Still falling, still constant, but whisper light. Like the sky had grown tired too. You blinked slowly, your lashes heavy. Your cheek, pressed to the blanket and the door, was warm. One hand had slipped beneath your chin, palm curled upward, fingers slack. Your breath passed through your lips in quiet sighs. No tension, no worry, just presence, just softness. Somewhere in the distance, a train horn blew. Not loud, not urgent. Just a low, melancholy sound, wrapped in space and rain. It echoed once, then disappeared into the night. Your dad didn't react. He kept driving. One hand on the wheel, the other resting against the window ledge, his gaze steady. No rush. Just the road, stretching forward like an unspooling ribbon. The car dipped gently as it passed over a low bridge. You felt it in your stomach, a soft, downward swoop that made your breath catch slightly. Then everything lifted again, smooth and slow, like a boat cresting a wave. The sensation rocked you further toward sleep. The music on the radio had faded to instrumental now. No voices, just soft piano and strings. The kind of melody that rises and falls without asking for attention. The notes seemed to melt into the rhythm of the car. The engine's hum, the wipers swish, the occasional shift in tire sound as the road texture changed. You felt the outline of your own heartbeat. Slow, deep, rhythmic, like the ticking of a grandfather clock in a quiet house. Your thoughts had thinned into threads. No full sentences, no real language, just impressions. The smell of your dad's jacket, leather and laundry soap. The faint aroma of the rain-wet pavement through the cracked window. The memory of another night like this one, years ago, when you fell asleep during a drive home from a birthday party, your hands sticky with frosting, your cheeks flushed from laughing. Everything now had that same glow, that same permission to let go. You didn't need to answer any questions, didn't need to know where you were, didn't need to do anything but breathe. The blanket had shifted slightly, but you didn't move to fix it. Your body didn't want to move. The heat from the seat had wrapped around your legs. Your spine had relaxed into the contours of the cushion. Every inch of you was still. If someone had spoken your name, you might have heard it. But you wouldn't have answered. Not because you were asleep, not yet, but because words had no weight here. Only warmth did, only comfort. You could tell that your dad had adjusted the mirror to check on you now and then. Not often, not with worry, just a glance. Enough to make sure the blanket hadn't slipped too far. Enough to see your chest rise and fall. Enough to feel, through the mirror and the silence and the softness of the night, that you were okay. That you were exactly where you needed to be. You drifted further now, not in a hurry, not toward any destination, just deeper. Deeper into the feeling, deeper into the weightlessness. The window had fogged more fully now, your breath painting slow circles against the glass. Raindrops still dotted the outside, but they weren't racing anymore. They clung gently, moving only when the car tilted just right. The city had fallen away. There was no schedule here, no traffic, no screens, no voices, only warmth, only rhythm, only quiet. You could feel yourself fading, not with fear or resistance, but with welcome. The cocoon had wrapped around you entirely. Now, the seat, the blanket, the air, even your thoughts had tucked themselves in, leaving behind only breath and presence. You hadn't moved in minutes. Your breath was so slow you could feel it, pulse by pulse, ease your body further inward. The car turned once more. You barely noticed. Only the soft change in direction, the way your shoulder leaned slightly toward the door. Then everything balanced again. Everything returned to stillness. The rain had stopped. You hadn't noticed that either, not when it happened. Only now, in its absence, did you feel the difference. The car was quiet, the world outside hushed, and you, warm in your cocoon, were nearly gone. Not lost, not gone forever, just somewhere else. Just held, just drifting. You could stay here forever, and for now, this small forever, this moment, you did. You weren't home yet. But it didn't matter. Home had already arrived, in its own quiet way, wrapped in fabric and motion, in warmth and breath and the familiar silhouette of your dad behind the wheel. The city had long since softened into something formless, its lights more suggestion than structure. Even the buildings seemed to dissolve into shadow now, leaving behind only a sense of movement, of steady, quiet progress through a world that asked nothing of you. It could have been midnight, or later. Time didn't seem to apply anymore. You were beyond it, nestled in the soft rhythm of tires over wet roads, the steady whisper of the vents, and the cocoon of stillness that had formed around you in the back seat. The rain had thinned to a mist. Outside, the world was just a low hum, a blurred glow, a faraway thing that couldn't quite reach you. Your breath came so slowly now. You weren't thinking about it, but if you listened, really listened, you could feel each inhale stretch out like a gentle tide rolling in. Then the exhale, a long, soft release. like letting go of everything you didn't even realize you were holding. The window beside your face was completely fogged. On the inside, your own breath had painted a patch of gentle white, while outside, the mist and streetlight halos gave the illusion of clouds moving just inches away. You might as well have been floating through the sky itself, like a little spacecraft made of steel and softness and engine heat, drifting peacefully above the city that slept below. In the front seat, your dad shifted his hand on the wheel. Just once. You heard the soft rustle of his sleeve, the faint adjustment of his weight as he leaned ever so slightly, checking the next turn. He hadn't said a word since the start of the drive, but somehow, everything he needed to say had already been said. In the rhythm of the car, in the quiet of the cabin, in the way he drove just slow enough to rock you and just steady enough to let you drift. That was his way, his language, movement over words. Small acts of care stretched across long roads. You thought you might tell him that sometime, but not tonight. Tonight, you were somewhere between now and never, nowhere, and home. The car rolled through a long stretch of tree-lined road now. You knew this one. Knew the bends, and the way the road dipped near the old stone wall. How the pavement curved like a ribbon, with tall oaks on either side leaning overhead like guardians. Even half asleep, you could feel their presence. Those branches just barely brushing the roof as you passed beneath them, like fingers reaching down from the night to wish you safe travels. The wheels rolled softly over a strip of uneven road. A quiet bump. A sigh of shock absorbers. And then the smooth hum returned. You adjusted nothing. Moved not at all. Just breathed. Just listened. Just floated. A cat darted across the street far ahead. Its shape, lit for a moment by the headlights, disappeared just as quickly into the shadows. You didn't see it. You only knew because your dad tapped the brake with such practiced ease, slowing for a breath, then resuming the gentle pace again. Nothing sharp, just smooth. You let your eyes fall closed again, and this time you stayed there. Not with intention, not with resistance, just softly. You didn't fall asleep in a moment. It happened the way everything else had happened tonight. Gradually, like mist forming on glass. You weren't pulled into dreams. You were placed there, gently, like being set down in a warm bed by hands that knew how to tuck you in without ever waking you. You may have still heard the heater, the low hum of the tires, the sigh of your breath. Or maybe you didn't. Maybe the sounds became something else, an underwater lullaby, a blanket made of wind and memory. Somewhere, behind closed eyes, images flickered. Not dreams, not quite, just flashes of warmth. A cup of cocoa passed to you by hands that matched your dad's. A porch swing creaking under the weight of two quiet figures. Rain on the roof of a cabin you've never been to, but somehow remember. And then, just the road. Always the road, stretching ahead. You didn't know where you were going. Didn't need to. Because the point wasn't the destination. The point was this moment, this now, this perfect sound-wrapped, softly swaying now. The car made one final turn. You felt it in your body more than in your mind. A slight tip to the left, followed by the long, slow exhale of the car settling back into the straightaway. And maybe, just maybe, the streets here were familiar enough for some deeper part of you to know the way. But it didn't matter. You were already where you needed to be. Still tucked in the back seat. Still warm. Still weightless. Still safe. The world could keep turning. The rain could come and go. The lights could fade, and dawn could rise. And you would still be here. Still drifting. Still held. Still asleep.